Exodus, return to the promised land, lesson 17, water from a rock. So you want to know what our lesson is tonight? I've starting this off with in the 16th chapter of Exodus to wrap up where we were the last time. It says, Moses told Aaron, take a container and put 2 quarts of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be preserved throughout your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron placed it before the testimony to be preserved. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate manna until they reached the border of the land of Canaan. It says they put this before the testimony, and some people say that the book of Exodus is not written in chronological order, so the tabernacle was already built, but yet it's not until later on in Exodus. I don't think that's the case. I think it's pretty much in chronological order. Some say that a different writer inserted different things, so I don't buy any of that. I believe that when he says they put it before the testimony, I have no idea what they're talking about, and neither does anybody else. Don't have the foggiest idea what they're talking about, but there was some place they kept it, and I'm quite sure they had tents that they lived in and so on as they traveled. I don't know because it doesn't tell us, because we don't need to know. But all we need to know is they kept some of this out for this purpose. They used a measure called an omer, which held 2 quarts. So, ceremony and tradition is what we talked about the last time. Why were they commanded to take a container of this manna and put it aside and keep it? Why were they told to do that? What was the purpose in it? What good was it? It was a visual reminder of the fact that for all times and when they built the tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant, they put the manna in the different times, depending on where you read in the Bible. Inside of the Ark of the Covenant was the bowl of manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the 10 Commandments. The 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments were in the Ark of the Covenant, depending on which particular place you're reading at what time in history. But they kept it for that purpose, so it was part of ceremony and tradition that we were talking about before. You can begin to worship ceremony and tradition instead of worshiping God. But if you let ceremony and tradition help you, remind you of who God is and what He's done for you, that's a different story. So that's the purpose in this manna, is to keep it in such a way so they'll look at it and they can, for all times, they can see this manna and say, He fed us when we were in the wilderness. For all those years, 40 years. He rained manna out of the sky. And like they're like all the rest of us get from time to time. They were starving, so they wanted something to eat, and He rained manna out of the heaven for them to eat, and they ate that. You know they got tired of it after a while. I don't know how many different ways you can cook manna, if you can cook it. But if Mama was cooking, do what? No, if Mama was cooking it, she'd put some bacon grease in it probably. But they couldn't do that. But that law had not come about yet. Pardon me?
Not if she was a Jew.
No, well, that law had not come about yet. So we'll run into that in the book of Exodus, beginning of that anyway. So the hog is something that they're not real high on. So they're high on the hog. So now we're in Exodus, the 17th chapter, and we'll start with the first verse to get us where I want us to go tonight. And pardon me for scratching my face, it itches every once in a while. I might go home, as soon as I get home, I might shave. The entire Israelite community left the wilderness of Sin. That's not sin, it's Sin. Moving from one place to the next according to the Lord's command. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So the people complained to Moses, "Give us water to drink." "Why are you complaining to me?" Moses replied to them. "Why are you testing the Lord?" So I have some questions for us. Who did they demand to give them water? Moses. Is that where they've been getting their sustenance up to this point? Is that who had been protecting them up to this point? But they went to Moses, because the one you can see is the one you're going to blame, I guess. And I said, why is this important? All right, it's important is because who were they putting their confidence in? Who do they put their trust in? There are, I won't tell you, but in my lifetime, I have one particular president that's my favorite president in my lifetime. But I never worshiped him. I never expected him to give me anything, or anybody in Washington to give me anything. But people are looking for somebody to supply everything that they need and give them all that they want. And they begin to worship this government. They begin to worship these men, these people that are the representatives. That's not the thing to do. That's the reason this is important. Who's the only one that could answer their demand to give me water? God was the only one that could answer it, but they went to Moses, like Moses could do something about it. So, who do we depend on for our needs and wants? That's who we say we believe, but who do we really depend on? I'm not asking you to answer this question. Just think about it. Who do you depend on to have your needs met? Who do you depend on for your everyday thing? Who do we depend on? So much of what we depend on has gotten to where it's government. People will ask the question, something will happen, and they say, well, the government should. The first place you go is the government. You said the federal government. Where's FEMA? Where are your neighbors? The way things should be in our mind is we take care of ourselves. Then our family, we get our needs met within our family. Then you get your needs met within your community, within your church. Then you get your needs met within your township or your city. You get your needs met within your county. You get your needs met within the state. You get before you ever get to the federal government. But people have gotten to the point nowadays, the first thing they ask is, well, what's the government done? What's the president done? That's not a question to ask. And that's what we depend on so many times. And these people were looking to a man, to Moses, to supply them with water because they had gotten dependent upon him. And that happens with us as human beings. The Christian Standard Bible says, so the people complained to Moses, give us water to drink. Why are you complaining to me? Moses replied to them, why are you testing the Lord? The Expanded Bible says it this way, and this expands what the Hebrew says here. It says, so the people quarreled with, accused, made a case against Moses, and said, give us water to drink. Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with, accuse, make a case against me? Why are you testing, putting on trial the Lord? Look the way he shifted that around. In fact, I've got it here. And I got the question, is it easier to complain to a visible person or to an invisible person? How many of you have physically heard God speak? Well, so you can have some sympathy on the people here. Well, I think sometimes we're a little too hard on them, although they deserve it. But we're a little too hard on them because what would we do if we'd have been in the same position? We've been looking at the same thing. We've been looking for somebody to give us some help. I need water, and I want somebody to give me some water. And you're going to look to the person you can see. That's not where we should put our trust. Expanded Bible says, why? But what did Moses do with this? He turned it around. He said, why are you accusing the Lord? He didn't say, why are you accusing me? He said, why are you accusing the Lord? That's the question. That's what's important. You're not accusing me. It's not up to me to get you some water. 17:1, the entire Israelite community left the wilderness of Sin, moving from one place to the next. According to the Lord's command, they camped in Rephidim. And I put a note there because I want you to understand the way you pronounce that is Sin. That's not the wilderness of sin. And that's the way we read it. It's the wilderness of sin. You think, well, maybe it's because they sinned, but that's not what it is. It's an area. Do we know exactly where it is? No. But on this particular map, you see over here, you see the kind of red-looking thing, looks like a balloon. That's in the area where they say the Sin Desert, the Sin Desert, the Sin Desert is. But if you notice, all these names, if you can see them from there, have question marks behind them. Do you know why? Because we don't know. We don't know for sure. But to put it in the context of about where this is, we're talking down here, the wilderness of Sin. In this particular area, this says this is Rephidim here. And this map spreads it out. So here's where Israel is today. There's Jerusalem is in this area, Hebron, so on, Sea of Galilee, the Dead Sea, the Jordan River, and over here is the Nile River, and this is where they had come from, and they're somewhere down in here at this particular time. It gives you, I like pictures. I like getting a picture of where something is. They have traveled a pretty good way on foot to get to where they are. Most of it's on foot, I'm quite sure. They might have carried some, did they have camels with them? Probably. They have some donkeys, could have. I don't know, but most of them, I'm quite sure, were on foot. The basic means of transportation back then for thousands of years was on foot. To put it in a bigger context, this is the Sinai Peninsula. This is the area that we're talking about. And so you can see how it is. When you put it in a big map like this, you can see how small Israel is amongst all of the other nations that are around them, Assyria and Turkey, Greece, Rome, Italy, it's northern Africa, Tripoli, Algiers, and then Portugal, Spain, France. All of that huge area, and this little place here is the land they're headed to, the land of Canaan. This is drawn out in the shape of, I don't know how well you can see it on this, but on the shape of what Israel is today. So it's a very small area in comparison for the Promised Land. I would listen to an interview today, and they're talking about anti-Semitism is growing horribly in our nation and in our world right now. And he says the way you can explain this is people, when things are not going their way, they want somebody to blame. These people wanted to blame Moses. They want somebody to blame. So the smallest group of people you can get to get your mind around, that's who you're going to blame. And he said in the end, it's going to get down to the smallest group of people, smallest nationality, which is the Jews. There's in the whole world, 15 to 17 million Jews in the whole world, and half of them, near about, lives in the United States. And so that's the reason he's saying that people are beginning, anti-Semitism is growing again, because everybody's wanting to blame somebody, and they're saying the Jews are in control of all. I've seen an article that says the Jews were the ones that controlled the transatlantic slave trade over here back in the 1700s and so on, which is it's just not true. Were there some businessmen that were Jews that were involved in selling slaves? There probably was. There were some of all nationalities, from people from all over the world. Did you know the transatlantic slave trade? You know the vast majority of them did not come to where the United States of America is. They went to all different, the Caribbean, they went to South America. The vast number of them went other places. But you would think, from listening to some people, that the United States is the only place that had any black slaves, period. And that's just not true. And they were saying that it was the Jews that were controlling the slave trade. It's the Jews, so they're blaming everything on the Jews again. The attacks on mosques have increased exponentially, not mosques, against synagogues. Synagogues, thank you. Attacks on synagogues and Jewish communities has grown exponentially in the last few years. People are upset at the Jews. And you see these protests, and you see the different ones, and what are they wearing? They're wearing these keffiyehs. They're wearing these symbols of Hamas, of the Arab world, and not the Jews. They're blaming the Jews for all the problems that you have in Somalia and everywhere else. It's the Jews' fault. And it's just this little group of people right now. It's a little nation here. is all that there ever was of them, even at the most populous time. So, who delivered them from bondage? God did. Who sent the plagues on Egypt? God did. Who opened the Red Sea? God did. Who fed them manna? God did. Who do they go to now for water? Moses. It looks like it would dawn on them. I know I said we should take it easy on them, but it looks like it should begin to dawn on them by now that God is out for their good and to deliver them. We have to remind ourselves of this from time to time, that God wants, He wants the best for me. Does that mean everything is going to work out perfect? But what we want to do is, sorry if you've said this or somebody said it to you. Somebody loses a member of their family, and what do people tell them? Well, it must have been God's will. Everything that happens in this world is not God's will. If it was, it'd be a good place to live, wouldn't it? Was Adam and Eve, was it God's will for them to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil? No. You know how I know that? Because He told them, don't eat from that tree. I'm telling you, it's best not to eat from that tree. His will was for them to live in that garden and have a wonderful life and raise some good children and have a wonderful world for us to live in and not have all the plagues that we have now. So everything that happens in this world is not because it's God's will. Everything, just because it happens, and you think, we think of ourselves and we say that we're free will Baptists, that we believe in free will, but so many times we talk like we're predestinationalists. We say, well, that was God's will that happened. Well, it's not necessarily so. Was it God's will that Marley got in an accident and broke her? That God didn't send another man to crash into them so that they would wind up in the hospital. Bad things happen in this world. But we want somebody to blame, and it's easier to go back. For them, they wanted somebody they could look at. They wanted somebody they could put their eyes on, and that was Moses. Don't you know, would you like to have been in Moses' position? Would you like to have had his job? He doesn't. Anyway, why are you complaining to me? Moses replied to them. Why are you testing the Lord? But the people thirsted there for water and grumbled against Moses. They said, why did you ever bring us from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? Why did you bring us out here to kill us? Does this not sound like human nature? Why did you bring us out? They were all happy and cheerful and glad to escape from Egypt, the greatest thing that ever happened. And now they say, why did you bring us out here like He made them? Why did you bring us out here to make us die of thirst? Why did you do this? Remember the last time, the same thing, they said, why did you bring us out? We had it good in Egypt. That's what they kept saying. We had it good, and we had plenty of meat to eat. Everything was going good. If it was good, why were you grumbling and complaining and crying? Why were you upset? You had it good, and they were taking your babies and throwing them in the Nile River. That sounded like a good place to live to me. But they had it good because they forget. You forget things when you get down the road a little bit, and that's the way they are here. Why did you bring us out here? For all of us to die of thirst. Then Moses cried out to the Lord, what should I do with these people? In a little while they will stone me. So now Moses is complaining to God. These people are going to stone me. Hold on, Moses. Who's been protecting you all this time? So he's falling into the same camp as them in some respect. They're going to stone me. Who do you fear the most, man or God? The Lord answered Moses, go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take the staff you struck the Nile with in your hand and go. I am going to stand there in front of you on the rock of Horeb. When you hit the rock, water will come out of it, and the people will drink. Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. Before we go any further, question yourself. You're sitting there. Had he ever seen water come out of a rock? Had anybody ever seen it in the middle of out in the wilderness? Had anybody ever seen a rock and all of a sudden water? But God told him to go smack that rock with his stick that he gave him, that he told him to carry with him, and water was going to come out of it. That took a lot of faith on Moses' part, didn't it? I would think so. Rashi, who is a Jewish commentator, a rabbi, I think, from back in 12th, 13th century, his view was that God was annoyed with Moses and had him to walk out in front to show him that they wouldn't stone him. That's what he said. Now, do I believe that? I don't think that's necessarily what it did, but that's what he says. He named the place Massa and Meribah because the Israelites complained and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not? Is the Lord among us or not? Which one is it?" And you see Massa and Meribah means test and quarrel, is what those two names mean. And he says, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Stop and think. Think back. Why are you here? You're out here in the wilderness of sin. How did you get here? You got here because God delivered you. You got here because He opened the Red Sea and let you walk on dry land. You're here because, and you can go right on down the list, but it's not it's what have you done for me lately? Not what have you done for me? And here's the question. Will we only believe God when we've seen a sign? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. If we have to wait until we see first, there's a lot of things we won't believe. Has anybody here ever met Donald Trump? How do you know he's president of the United States? You've seen him on TV. How do you know they're not faking it? I know there's people to this day that say we never landed on the moon. It was just all in Hollywood. It was a production. And you can't, no matter what you say to them, you can't get them to believe you. You can't get them to listen to you. You have to. The only way they would believe if you put them in the spaceship and sent them to the moon, when they got there, they say, "We're not on the moon." If you're determined not to believe, you're not going to believe. So if you have to wait for everything until you have a sign, have something physical to look at, to feel, and to touch, there's a lot of things you're not going to believe. I can say that I love all of you, right? How do you know that's true? Can you see that? You can. Elvis is alive too. You know what I figured out? He's on a deserted island with John F. Kennedy. The two of them are out there because they said that he's still alive too. Do I?
He's on the moon.
They could be on the moon. Maybe that's what they went up there for, to put the two of them on the moon to live. Who knows? But people believe all kinds of crazy things. It's hard to get people. You can get people to believe conspiracy theories, but it's hard to get them to believe the truth. John F. Kennedy. I think I've read every conspiracy theory since 1963 about who killed him. And when it comes down to the final analysis, Lee Harvey Oswald shot his rifle, shot 3 times, and killed him. Now, was anybody else involved? Nobody knows. There's nobody can prove one, but they'll swear they know. And this one swears that they know, but they disagree with this one that swears they know, but yet both of them are right. So people want to see things. They're not going to believe it regardless of what you do. Children of Israel needed God the way that we, when infants, needed our parents. When we were little kids, we needed our parents. A baby needs their parents. They need the adult world or they would die. It's just as simple, right up until they're older. Even when children get to the point where they think they don't need their parents, they most likely still need their parents. Some way or another. We were born in a good society here, so it's a little bit different than it is some places. How much of the law of God did they have available to them? The people of Israel. How much of God's law did they have available to them at this particular time? They didn't, because God had not given the law yet. So they were having to go. We have less excuse than they do, because they didn't have the written law. They didn't have the Old Testament and the New Testament. They didn't have, I won't get to that now. Mature adults do not demand intervention of their parents. In faith, we know that God exists and loves us even without direct intervention. Isn't that true? That's the way we have to take that on faith. That's called maturity. That's called growing in faith. I believe in God more now than I did when I was 12, when I was 15. Because the older I get and the more experience and more mature I get, and we're all getting fairly mature in here, we have matured to the point where our relationship with God should be better than what it was before. If you're going downhill, you're doing something wrong. But the children of Israel had no law to base it on. They didn't have it, but they did have all these miraculous things, and we could say in our mind, if I'd have seen all that, then I would have believed. Would you? At Rephidim, Amalek came and fought against Israel. Moses said to Joshua, select some men for us and go fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the hilltop with God's staff in my hand. Joshua did as Moses had told him and fought against Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. While Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, but whenever he put his hand down, Amalek prevailed. When Moses' hands grew heavy, they took a stone and put it under him. And I guess something nice to sit on, isn't it? Put it under him, a stone, and put it under him, and he sat down on it. Then Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other, so that his hand remained steady until the sun went down. Sat there the whole time. So, what was the significance of Moses holding his hand up? And why did he have to hold his hand up? Why was that important? It was a visual. It was something that you could see. And they could see him. As long as they could see him, the fight went well with them when they saw his hand raised up. But when his hands would drop down, they would start losing. They would start leaving their confidence. So what was the significance of Aaron and Hur? You got somebody. So the point is, there's not one of us can do this by ourselves. We're in this world together. We were talking about this because I was watching an interview before I left the house. The effects from COVID, from the kids being locked in their houses on screens for a year, 2 years, 3 years in some places, we're still going through the effects of that in our society. We as adults were affected by that. The younger they are, the more they are affected by that. It's going to be years before we get past that and get to the point where we can get. But when kids can't look other kids in the eye and communicate with them, they suffer. When we can't look at each other in the eye and communicate with each other, we suffer. I like text messages for certain things. Other things, I'm going to call somebody, and most of the time what I do is I'll text somebody and it says, when you're free, could you call me? Or would you call me? I don't say could you, because Edna would be the first one to say, I can do it, but I might not want to. So I say, would you call me? Because when I can hear somebody's voice, is more than when I can just see a text message. That's cold and impersonal to me. Now, I like it for communication. I use it for communication, especially when I just need to send a message, get something quick, and don't have to worry with it. But what's even better than that is when I can stand and look you in the eye and talk with you. It makes a difference. They had this visual that they could look at, that they could see. They knew when they went into the battle with Joshua, God had told them that this is my will for you to do this, so I'm on your side. I'm going to take care of this. But they needed something more. They needed to see something. We are visual and we're auditory. So Joshua, 13th verse, Joshua defeated Amalek and his army with the sword. The Lord then said to Moses, write this down on a scroll as a reminder and recite it to Joshua. I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek under heaven. And Moses built an altar and named it, the Lord is my banner. Verse 16, he said, indeed my hand is lifted up toward the Lord's throne. The Lord will be at war with Amalek from generation to generation. He said, write this down on a scroll as a reminder and recite it to Joshua. I will completely blot them out. He's reminding them to not remember. It's a reminder that you're not to remember. That's like when somebody would be conversing with me and they said they had a hard time with some particular person, and they said, I say, have you forgiven them? I've forgiven them, but I have not forgotten. And you know what my next line is? If you're not in the process of working on forgetting it, you haven't forgiven them. If the first thing you think of when you think, I don't want anybody to bring anybody to mind because I don't get people upset before you go home. But there's people that have done me wrong in my life. If when I think about them, the first thing I think about is what they did me wrong, I need to work on that. I need to go before God and say, Father, I repent. I've forgiven this person. I've forgiven them for what they've done. And then it gets to where it's less and less and less of a memory to me. He wanted them, I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek under heaven. So they were supposed to slowly not remember them. 17:15 in the Expanded Bible, then Moses built an altar and named it, the Lord is my banner, Yahweh Nissi. King James Version says, Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. Christian Standard Bible says, and Moses built an altar and named it, the Lord is my banner. So when you're reading those three translations, or any translation, it's not saying something different. They're all saying the same thing. It's the translation of the word. And this is the way, in case you wanted to know how to spell it in Hebrew, that's over in the left-hand top corner. If you want to, nobody's writing this down. You got it in your Bible, okay. So, and remember, you read from right to left, not left to right. So the first symbols are YHVH, if we translate it into ours, which is, what is that? I am the all-sufficient one. I don't need anybody else. And it says, with the pronominal, I think they meant pronominal, but I think they spelled it wrong, the one I got this from. Suffix, Jehovah is my banner, Jehovah Nissi, a symbolic name of an altar in the desert, Jehovah Nissi. So that's what this, and each time as you follow through, and you follow through the Old Testament, God would give him, and some people call it the covenant names of God, Jehovah Nissi, Jehovah Rapha, Jehovah Jireh, Jehovah. There's all different ones throughout the Old Testament, and each one of them saying, we say Jehovah. That's not really the way the word is. So, questions or comments?